So today we're back on Anime Expeditions, where we recently got a Dragon Ball update, and I gotta admit, I was wrong about some of the new units. So we're gonna be making changes to my tier list, and also talking about some other nerdy stuff. I hope you guys found the video helpful. If you do, maybe leave a like or subscribe, but anyways, let's get into it. So we're going to start off by making changes to the tier list. If you haven't seen my last tier list video, that's what we're starting off with today. And I have gone ahead and changed up the icons, so let me know what you think about the unit icons here. It used to be like the full rarity screenshot, whatever, and I thought I got kind of cluttered, so I tried this out today. Anyway, I'm going to be pretty quick with the changes here, so we're going to move up Megami to top 1. He's still really good for DPS and has great supporting value. We are going to remove Goku from the top 10 meta overall. I do have an entire video on why this guy works differently than I originally thought, and he's really not as good as I thought. So yeah, Goku is moving down for sure. It also means his own DPS is worse than I thought because his ability doesn't work how it showed on paper, and it actually makes him pretty weak. And then his buffing, of course, the whole point of my last video, it is not as good as I thought. But back to the meta overall tier, we're going to move up Kenpachi, because this guy actually has better DPS now with the new Dragon Ball accessory, the pole or whatever. So Kenpachi I'm going to move up to about here. And Gohan we're also going to move up because this guy has better DPS than I thought. Not better enough DPS to go above Megami. I mean, he has more if we don't use Megami Shadow Realm, if you have the max debuffs on enemies, but for the most part, Megami is still better DPS than Gohan. I do think Gohan needs to move up overall though. And then Vegeta I'm going to move down because his DPS is still the top one in the game, single target, but his AoE is pretty bad, and that is kind of important. So, my bad guys for ranking him number 1. And then for our last unit in the top 10, we're going to move up a Trunks because we kicked out Goku. Trunks is a pretty good buffer and DPS unit. We're also going to move Trunks up in the DPS category because his DPS is better than I thought. And then Cuber is going to move down in the DPS category. He's actually worse than I thought. And Gother is going to move up into meta DPS. Oh yeah, Kenpachi, of course, going to move up a little bit because he's better now with the new equipment. I do think I'd actually put him probably above Cell. I'm not too sure about this one. I mean, Cell's a way better support. I'm guessing like in future updates he'll still be way better than Kenpachi, even if Kenpachi's damage gets power crept. But I think for now I'll put Kenpachi higher. And then we're going to throw in Gabimaru and Sabo into the good DPS category, just because we might as well. And I'm also going to throw in a Cubert into the stall category, because this guy actually has stun on his like little cube summon things. And we're also going to throw in Ice Mage, because might as well. It still does have slow. And then in the buffing category, Cubert is a better buffer than I thought. And I'm also going to kick out Gohan from the buffing tier. I kind of thought about it more, and I don't think his dot reapplication counts as buffing. He kind of just takes someone else's dot and turns it into his own. But to replace him, we can throw in Vegeta in the buffing category, because Vegeta has a 15% damage buff to anything transformed in his range. So these should be way more accurate rankings in my opinion. Sorry for the first tier list being kind of off, I didn't finish testing stuff yet. And also, a lot of the new units are kind of weird and like they don't work how they showed on paper. I don't know, especially Goku, but either way, hopefully these rankings make sense. If they don't, I am going to talk about some more stuff in this video that might kind of explain it better. Okay, now with the tier list changes out of the way, because I think that is the most important part people care about, I want to talk about DPS, damage per second, because I've still been seeing some crazy comments which are about Judar, Dark Mage. I don't know why everybody loves this unit, but the people who do leave evil comments sometimes, man, and like, okay, at the end of the day, voice your own opinion, you know, but I feel like the people commenting stuff like this, glazing Dark Mage, don't really understand DPS, and I want to talk about that in this video. So first we gotta get one thing very clear, okay? The number right under the unit that says DPS is not actually their DPS. It is not an accurate representation of how much damage they're doing, because it is the damage they're doing to the entire map. So pretty much I could open the enemy spawner here and just spawn in like 1,000,000 enemies, and then Judar's DPS is going to be crazy, but he's not actually doing 1,000,000 damage per second. He's just doing like 1 damage per second to 1,000,000 enemies, okay? So I think that might be where a lot of people see Judar doing some crazy number here, when really it doesn't mean anything for his actual damage output. And for the record, if we're going off that damage number, okay, if we're going off the DPS number, the unit that actually does the most is Itachi. When the illusion mark goes off on Itachi, he spikes up to 5 million right there. So for the record, like I've been saying in a bunch of videos in the past, okay, Judar has never been the top 1 DPS, literally ever. I don't know why I'm always seeing comments like Judar's top 1, anybody who disagrees is stupid, because at the end of the day it's just not true. But whatever, man. If you are somebody who actually cares about like real damage numbers and kind of what the meta is looking like right now, now we'll get to the section of the video that took me the most amount of time, all of my testing and spreadsheets and everything. Here comes the nerdy part of the video, okay, but a good amount of information in here if you actually care about DPS numbers. I know my testing isn't perfect. If you disagree with the way I do my testing, that's completely fine. But here is how I do my testing if you're wondering. Pretty much a summary of all this is just like, I try to get as much DPS out of each unit as I could. I gave them their best scenarios pretty much, besides making me like Shadow Realm and some of the abilities, because some of the like nuke abilities in this game make their DPS output kind of inconsistent. But pretty much, I've done a lot more testing now, and my results are right here. So we have a chart, we have GOAT, Amazing, Good, Decent, Mid, Bad, and DNF. DNF meaning did not finish, they did not pass the test. So ignore this little part, by the way, this should have been deleted, but my friend was asking me about Primordial versus Unbound Vegeta, and here's kind of the difference between those two if you were wondering. But yeah, I put a lot of time into this little DPS chart here, which will definitely be improved in the future. There are more tests that could be way more accurate. I plan to do more testing in the future, but I did already spend a few hours in the sandbox today. And for now, I want to take a break and just kind of show you guys my findings. So pretty much, if we're looking at these here, Gohan is like the #1 GOAT of DPS besides Vegeta, who has more single target in the first test here. Now keep in mind, this is Gohan with his ideal scenario. So for his test right here, row number 9, we had a bunch of random debuffing units spammed around the map. So we had Rukia, Choso, Sabo, Itachi, and Ice Mages all around. So do keep that in mind that in general gameplay, when you don't have like every unit spammed down by this guy, the gap between Vegeta and Gohan is going to be way more. Like Vegeta is going to be doing a lot more than Gohan if you don't have max debuffing. Yeah, Vegeta is still the #1 DPS unit, that's where he was on the tier list, and it is by a very small margin when you have like the full potential of Gohan. Of course, Gohan is way better for AoE clear. He actually did even better than Judar for AoE, so that's kind of surprising because Judar's DPS is known for being so consistent and having good AoE coverage. But the 50 enemy test is where I like spaced out a bunch of enemies here. 50 bosses, they're spawning groups of 10, roughly 4 seconds apart. So the AoE test pretty much, and Gohan was the #1 unit for it, so that's pretty surprising. Gohan's definitely very, very good, and I moved him up in the tier list to reflect that. And then Megami is still really good, Judar still pretty good, and Pachi with the new equipment was actually very surprising. He did a lot better on the test after I retested him now. I do think Itachi's ranking is always kind of a weird one, because this unit, as I kind of showed in the last section with like the fake DPS thing, you know, the clickbait DPS number, Itachi's like the biggest culprit of what I call fake damage, okay? The way he works is like the more enemies you have, the more damage he does, and pretty much Itachi is just kind of good. He's decent for single target. He's pretty bad for spaced out enemies. He got a pretty bad clear time on this one, but I might have to retest him. And then for the clumped up 25 enemies here, he was actually the best one for it. So Vegeta, still really good. Still the #1 DPS by a little bit above Gohan. This is, of course, you know, max buff Gohan. For the most part, Vegeta is pretty clearly better than him in single target, but obviously way worse in AoE, so that's kind of why I moved him down in overall today for the tier list, because I do think AoE coverage does kind of matter, and Vegeta having only a circle is kind of a downside. But he is really good, and the #1 DPS right now in my testing. Go through, I finally ran a proper damage test for him, and the results were pretty surprising, pretty good. 12.3k DPS is not bad at all, and we moved him up into the meta DPS tier today. Free range is kind of decent, her single target DPS and her clump DPS are nothing crazy, but her AoE coverage is pretty good. It is a lot better than some of the other units on here, so. And then Doflamingo, worse than I thought. I think we moved him down a little bit today. I mean, his DPS is still pretty good, single target. He couldn't do the AoE test because he's a circle AoE, so. Grimjow getting into bad territory, his DPS just isn't very good. This guy I tested with Forsaken. If you're wondering, here's the like testing explained once again, if you just want to fully read all of this while you're kind of seeing the numbers now. Yeah, take everything with a grain of salt here. This is just kind of me showing my findings. I was also surprised by Trunks, kind of like Gother. He's actually pretty good, but because he's circle AoE, he did not beat the 50 enemy test, he DNF'd on that one. Then I tested Goku with Primordial and Forsaken, because a lot of people were asking about the difference between the two traits, and it turns out there really isn't one. So my bad if you heard my advice that Primordial is his best trait, and you rolled for it, because realistically you can kind of just keep Forsaken on this guy, and there isn't much of a difference at all. Primordial is a little bit better, but it also does depend on your crit RNG, so. But yeah, Goku on this spreadsheet, very underwhelming, very disappointing, because I do have a whole video on it, but like, the way his ability works right now is just so bad. And then Qbert is actually the worst one on here for DPS, he's actually really bad for it, which doesn't surprise me because he's mostly a support, but even with me kind of going in his favor, because for his test we put the enemies on 0 speed, just so he could kill them and actually get like his damage number, even with the enemies being on 0 speed and staying in one spot, he was the worst clear time and the worst DPS on here. And if I didn't put them in one spot, if I had the enemies moving, he would have got a DNF on every category. He actually failed every test that I run, because his AoE is horrible, and his DPS is just kind of okay. And then finally, for my DPS testing here, we have Cell. And Cell's a weird unit because he doesn't have his own damage number. He just kind of takes the damage number of the strongest unit in his range, at least a certain amount of it. And for my testing with Cell, I gave him a maxed out Kenpachi to scale off of. The damage was still pretty underwhelming though. But everything maxed out besides the bio reset, the infinite ability that kind of keeps him ramping up as much as you want him to. Overall, it became pretty clear that Cell is not really a DPS unit, he's more of a support. Yeah, I wanted to share my new DPS testing I've done. Hopefully some of you cared about the information on here. I don't know. I know it's kind of nerdy and just kind of me talking about numbers, but... Well, I think that's all I had planned for this video. I just wanted to talk about the meta right now, DPS numbers, and update my tier list, all that stuff. Pretty much just informational. And by the way, I don't know how much of this is like picked up by my mic or if I sound weird in this video, but I kind of woke up feeling a little bit under the weather today, so hopefully it doesn't really evolve into me being sick, but if I do end up being sick in future videos, I don't know, this might be where it starts, who knows. But either way, thank you to my channel members for making the video possible. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, hope to see you in the next one, and have a great day.